this is not the end. We still have lots of work to do. The most significant assassination that I'm looking for is the assassination of Ayatollah, the head of the snake.
It was legitimate to kill over 30,000 civilians while you were trying to get one terrorist, and Netanyahu's 30, 40 times the terrorist Sinwar is. By your logic, you're saying it's okay to kill 30, 40,000 innocent Israelis just to get Netanyahu. The minute they move those settlers into Gaza, you'll know for sure that this had nothing to do with self-defense. All of it was an excuse to steal more Arab land.
People like Cenk, they are living in a conspiracy theory, alternative reality. Palestinian is not limited to Gaza. Palestinian is a syndrome, it's a mental illness. And Cenk is the perfect example.
Okay, so you would like me to respond to a guy who just escaped from a mental asylum?
You are a parasite, a bottom feeder. This is the problem that we have dealing with scumbags like this.
What is wrong with you people?
Yahya Sinwar is dead. The mastermind of October the 7th and the architect of the war that followed has spent a year in hiding as Gaza crumbled around him. Israel says he died a coward. Many others say he died a martyr, fighting in combat fatigues until the bitter end. That cult of martyrdom is part of the multi-generational radicalization that Israel could now face long after the war ends. But how and when this war ends is now the most important matter at hand. Should Sinwar's death be the moment for Israel to declare victory and end the bloodshed? Or should Israel fight on to finish Hezbollah and neuter Iran? To debate this, I'm joined by Cenk Uygur, the host and founder of the Young Turks, and by the former member of Hamas and son of its co-founder, Mosab Hassan Yousef. Well, welcome to all of you. Let me start with you, Mosab, if I may. Obviously, a hugely significant development in this war that Yahya Sinwar, the architect of October the 7th, has been killed. But how significant do you think it is?
It is significant. Hassan Nasrallah's assassination was significant. The most significant assassination that I'm looking for is the assassination of Ayatollah, the head of the snake, who has been funding terrorists all over the Middle East to destabilize the region, who sacrificed Iranian children. He sent thousands of Iranian children to sweep minefields during the Iraqi-Iranian war. And he gave them keys and he said, this is the key to heaven. Then after that, he sacrificed Gaza children. He sacrificed Lebanon. He sacrificed Yemen. He is willing to sacrifice the entire world to satisfy his political ambition. This is the head of the snake. Sinwar was a great success. I will not cry for Sinwar's assassination. I was very pleased that simple soldiers who risked their lives since the beginning of the war got him finally by accident. Then you see the politicians around the world trying to take credit for Sinwar's death. It's a milestone. It's behind us. But this is not the end. We still have lots of work to do. And we cannot afford letting Iran get away with their crime. Because if we allow them, they are going to repeat another massacre. This time it was Hamas. Next time it's going to be a new name.
OK, Cenk, that is obviously the perspective from the other side. What I was struck by Sinwar's death was that he was hiding in Rafah, which is the very place that Israel have been urged by everyone, including yourself, not to go and attack, not to go into. And yet there is the head of Hamas, there is the person who ordered October the 7th. He's there. Does that not justify Israel's strategy in going in there?
No, not at all. I'm going to answer that in a second, Piers, but you asked a really important question about does the end of Yahya Sinwar and Hassan Nasrallah mean that this should come to a close? That's the central question. And here, they have no more targets left. All of Hamas leaders are dead. All of Hezbollah's leaders are dead. In fact, Israel just bragged that they killed the whole new set of leadership of Hezbollah. So if all the leadership is dead, what are we still doing in Gaza? What are we still doing in southern Lebanon? And so the minute they move those settlers into Gaza, you'll know for sure that this had nothing to do with self-defense. All of it was an excuse to steal more Arab land. So let's be absolutely clear about that. So in terms of Sinwar being in Rafah and this whole Israeli propaganda about, oh my God, they use the civilians as human shields. First of all, we found out and reported by both Israeli and American press that the Israeli soldiers literally use Palestinians, including children, as human shields that they put in front of them to do the booby trap thing that Mossad just explained. It's Israel that did that in this war and in earlier battles. They shoot, according to 100 American doctors that returned, they're shooting the Palestinian children in the head. An extraordinary amount of headshots. They've burned them alive, and now they're starving them in northern Gaza. So this had nothing to do with, oh my God, we're going to get Yahya Sinwar. In fact, the Israeli intelligence is excellent. As you can see, they blew up the walkie-talkies, the pagers, etc. They knew where Sinwar was the whole time. It was an accident, as Mossad just explained, because they didn't want to kill him, because he was an excuse. The hostage deal has been on the table since July 2nd. Israel's not taking it. Why? They want to use it as an excuse to absolutely annihilate northern Gaza and retake it. They're doing this past weekend, Netanyahu's party, Likud, did a seminar on how to resettle Gaza. This is all about grabbing land. It is a colonial war of conquest where Israel is Goliath and crushing the defenseless Palestinians and Lebanese so they can grab more of their land.
If after 9/11, America had discovered that bin Laden was hiding in a particular place, as they did many, many years later, but had they discovered it within a year, and they had attacked that place and taken him out, then most people would have said that was reasonable, responsive military action, wouldn't they? What's the difference morally between? Well, I mean, just to be clear, nobody disputes that Sinwar orchestrated and ordered October the 7th. So if he is the mastermind behind this heinous terror attack, then using the parallel of 9/11, is that not just justification? If that had been bin Laden, would anyone be having too many moral qualms about going after him and killing him?
No, Piers is a great example, but I reject your framing. So let me explain. So bin Laden we did get. And how did we get him? We got him through special forces. And if you remember, a year ago when I was on this program, you said, what should Israel do? And I said, special forces. Why? It's more concentrated. Does it put the special forces more at risk? Yes. Is that the point of special forces? Yes. That is what a moral, decent government does. And we got bin Laden without killing too many civilians at all. And in fact, about a month into the Afghanistan war, we had bin Laden cornered in Tora Bora, but the Bush administration turned down the request to go after him when there were no civilians around. Instead, they decided to launch the war in Iraq and kill hundreds of thousands of civilians. So Rumsfeld, Cheney, Bush, they're all war criminals. And Netanyahu is a massive war criminal. So now when you turn to Sinwar, look, nobody's shedding a tear for Yahya Sinwar. He orchestrated October 7th. You're right. Okay, but why did they not know where he was and a group of trainees accidentally wandered into him when Israeli intelligence knows everything with microscopic detail? And they accidentally missed the largest attack on Israel on October 7th? Those guys who know everything and where everyone is, they knew exactly where Hassan Nasrallah was, they knew exactly where the leadership was, but golly gee, we missed October 7th, and golly gee, we missed Yahya Sinwar, and instead we killed 42,000 people in Gaza, over 30,000 women and children, and then they've now killed over 2,000 in Lebanon. And they're saying, oh, we're not the terrorists Yahya Sinwar is, because we accidentally killed 30,000 women and children, slaughtered them, and oftentimes with headshots. So, Piers, let me ask you something. If it's legitimate to kill over 30,000 civilians while you're trying to get one terrorist, and Netanyahu's 30, 40 times the terrorist Sinwar is, by your logic, you're saying it's okay to kill 30, 40,000 innocent Israelis just to get Netanyahu?
No, I would throw back at you a different question, which is how many people did the allies, including obviously led by America, but also UK troops and others, how many did they kill in Afghanistan before they ended up killing bin Laden?
Okay, if we're doing this kind of framing, how about the French resistance? Do you know that the Nazis called them called them terrorists, and said that they were using human shields? And they were saying, how dare they attack the Germans who were just doing self-defense? The French resistance is shamelessly hiding among the French civilians, and they're terrorists, and they should be executed on the spot. So are you allowed to resist the Israelis? And it's a question to both you and Mossad. So is there any legitimate form of resistance that the Palestinians could do where the Israelis wouldn't kill them, and we could say, oh, yeah, there you go, let's fight for a state that way?
Let me put that.
No, they call everything terrorism.
Okay, let me ask Mossab that very question, because that's been put to me by a lot of Palestinians, a lot of pro-Palestinian voices as well, which is, it depends how you frame what Hamas and Hezbollah have been doing for the last 2 or 3 decades. You know, to many people where they come from, they are a form of resistance. To many people outside of the region, they're terrorists. You know, I think you and I share our view about what we think they are, but clearly a lot of people in the Palestinian world believe that Hamas and Hezbollah are not terrorists, but are essentially a form of freedom fighter. What do you say to that?
Listen, killing, looting, raping, kidnapping are not forms of resistance. You know, Gandhi led resistance in India against the British. It was a peaceful resistance. It bare fruit eventually. But what so-called Palestinians and the Palestinian revolution, it's a revolution without a compass. It's going to nowhere, and nothing can satisfy their ambition. And it has never been a fight over land. It's a religious fight that started some 1400 years ago. It's motivated by great hatred against the Jewish people. They don't want to accept the Jewish people to exist in that land. And the entire world is in denial in this fact. We say that this is the root cause problem, that the Muslims don't want the Jewish people to return to their homeland. The Jewish people are the indigenous of that land, with overwhelming evidence, as I told you in the past. The Muslims don't have any evidence that support actually their connection to that land. They are invaders. And the Palestinians invaded the land. They are not an ethnic group. Then now they have been trying so hard to delegitimize the Jewish people. And what I say to the Palestinians, first of all, you need to prove your legitimacy before you try to delegitimize the indigenous people of the land. Once you succeed of showing us who you are, then we may talk to you about a state. But to claim that you have the land, even though the indigenous of the land, the Jewish people, actually have been willing to share the land, and they were willing back in 1948 to share the land with the Arabs, but the Arabs refused. They had equal opportunity, just like the Jewish people, to declare their independence. But instead of declaring their independence back in 1948, they declared war against the Jewish people, only because they are Jewish people. Then 40 years later, in 1988, they declared their independence. So, once what so-called Palestinians drop their violent approach to the problem and accept Israel's right to exist in that region, then we can talk about things. But to really water it down and say that this is a conspiracy, people like Cenk, they are living in a conspiracy theory, alternative reality. We tell them that this war that Sinwar started in Gaza is a very dirty war. He weaponized civilians only to get sympathy of people like Cenk and many others around the globe. This is the most destructive weapon in the hands of Hamas, and millions around the world fell into this trap. So as long as we empower Hamas, more children are going to die. And if we don't remove Hamas from power, if we don't remove the Ayatollah from power, then this endless and vicious cycle of violence will continue for eternity. It's as simple as that. But of course, in the meantime, we are aware of the suffering of the children. The children of Gaza were born Arab. They were born innocent. They were not born Palestinians. Then they had been indoctrinated to hate. They have been indoctrinated to blame Israel. As Cenk right now, he has been blaming Israel since the beginning of the war, but now he sees the defeat of Hamas. So now he's changing his tone a little bit, his attitude. And I like his cleverity. He's a very clever Palestinian. He's the perfect example of a Palestinian, by the way. Cenk, just right there. Because Palestinian is not limited to Gaza. Palestinian is a syndrome. It's a mental illness. It's a universal phenomenon. And Cenk is the perfect example. And if he gets hungry eventually, I will not be surprised that he will eat his own children.
Okay, or Cenk, your response.
Okay, so you would like me to respond to a guy who just escaped from a mental asylum. Okay. If he calls me a Palestinian...
You are the one who should go to a mental asylum.
Okay. If he calls me a Palestinian, I am incredibly proud to bear that name. Thank you for making me an honorary Palestinian. The whole world should be honorary Palestinians for the suffering that they have gone through and the brutal slaughter of the Palestinians at the hands of the Israelis. So I don't want the audience to get confused. Mossad is an Israeli agent. He's a turncoat. He doesn't believe that the Palestinians should exist. But it's okay. I don't have to clarify it much because he just told you. He thinks that Palestinians don't exist and that they have no rights and that they are the ones encroaching on the indigenous land of the Israelis. I mean, look, I know if you're an Israeli supporter, some of you have lost your mind so much that you believe that the Muslims there that have been living there for centuries, millennium, are somehow in your way and they should just be dispensed with, and that the real, true heirs of that land are the people that were brought in from Europe and other places. Look, the Jewish people have suffered greatly throughout history, and anyone who denies that is denying reality. But now it breaks my heart to see that they have become what they most despised. They escaped that kind of brutality only to do it to the Palestinians now. So if you notice, Mossad over there never answered the question. There is no standard that the Palestinians can ever meet. They even say absurd things like they don't exist, that this Palestinian state should never exist, Palestinians as an ethnicity should never exist. And then they have the temerity to say, can you believe that they theoretically don't think that Israel should have a right to exist, even though it's existed since 1948. It's one of the biggest militaries in the world, backed by the greatest military power in the history of the world. It has nuclear weapons. Your existence is rock solid. You're murdering Palestinian
But that doesn't. But hang on, Cenk.
Wake
but Cenk,
up.
Let me jump in there.
Wake up.
Cenk, that doesn't
So
change
you didn't
the
jump
fact.
in as the lunatic was saying
hang
things,
on.
but go ahead.
Cenk, that doesn't change the premise of the argument that Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Iranian regime, none of them accept the existence of an Israeli state. And they are all wedded.
Oh, Piers,
well, hang on. Let me finish.
Let me
finish my question.
Okay,
and they're all wedded to its destruction. That's the point. It's not a question of whether it does exist.
No.
It's that all those groups
insane.
want to eradicate it. They're open about it.
Okay, Piers, let's look at your framing, okay? So in the reality-based world, Palestine does not exist because Israel is blocking its existence. Its cabinet voted to say that a Palestinian state will never exist. They will never allow it. So you're not worried that in the real world, the Palestinians are not allowed to exist, and if they resist at all their brutal 57-year humiliating occupation, they're called terrorists, they're the worst people on earth, we should hate them all, and they should never be allowed to exist. That's the real world. Israel exists and is one of the largest militaries in the world.
Yeah, but you're missing my point again, deliberately. I think you're deliberately missing my point.
Hold on. Okay, Piers, let me finish. Now, meanwhile, you live in a theoretical world where you say these powerless people who have no ability to affect Israel's existence at all, the Palestinians are literally throwing stones. They bomb back to the Stone Age. They have no power at all.
Hezbollah's been firing
You're
rockets.
saying, hold on. If you ask me a question, let me answer the goddamn question.
You are making wrong statements,
Okay, you're being a ridiculous, unfair, ridiculous person.
I'm picking you up
go and join the Mossad over here with him.
I'm picking you up. His name is Mosab, by the way, with a B. But the
Mossad, right? That's who he works for, and that's who he's
Well, his name
after.
is Mosab. And he works...
Oh, he's Mosab that works for Mossad. Okay, got it.
And the reason we haven't got him on screen at the moment, we've got a technical problem with him, which we're trying to fix. So you and I will keep talking. No, I think that you're deliberately... I think you're deliberately avoiding the point I'm making, which is...
No, I'm getting to the point you're making if you stop cutting me off.
Okay, but you're making misleading statements. You're saying these people are throwing rocks at Israel. They're doing a lot more than throwing rocks. Hezbollah's been firing rocket after rocket after rocket. Hamas has been launching terror attacks. The Houthis have been firing rockets. The Iranians are funding it all. It's not just rock throwing, Cenk, is it?
Okay, Piers, you're making it sound, this is the frame of all Western media, that the Palestinians and the Arabs and the Muslims are so strong, they're about to wipe out poor little Israel, who's barely existing right now, poor little David, and this Goliath Arabs are about to wipe them out. Are you crazy?
I said they would like to.
Israel is the... Okay, what an absurd thing. Okay, so here, Piers. African National Congress resisted the apartheid in South Africa. They did it through terrorism, they killed civilians, and they did it through peace, they did it through both. They were both terrorists and resistance fighters. They were both of those things. And you can be both of those things. What you would say right now is the African National Congress didn't want white South Africa to exist. They wanted them to be wiped out. The African National Congress are terrorists. They're the worst people. We have to keep apartheid because those guys are terrorists. We have to keep apartheid because they don't want South Africa to exist as it currently is. So no, that's absurd. So if you say to me, should Israel exist? Of course Israel should exist. Of course they should be a safe haven. But they're saying, no, Cenk, you're right, Israel should exist, but Palestine shouldn't. And you're saying I'm the one that's being unfair?
I haven't said that. Why are you putting words in my mouth?
The absurdity of that?
Why are you putting words in my mouth? I never said that.
Okay, Piers, do you see the absurdity?
I didn't say that,
the Israelis not only existing, but occupying the Palestinians for 57 years and preventing their state, and then claiming that their right to existence is somehow in jeopardy, but the Palestinians isn't. So for God's sake, what can the Palestinians do for these Israelis to free them, to give them their state and to stop occupying them?
Let me bring, we've got Mosab back.
Israelis, I'm begging you to stop being so brutal, stop being the thing that you hated. Stop being the thing that oppressed you in the first place. These Palestinians are not Nazis. You're fighting a ghost. No, the people who are being the fascists here, I hate to do this because it's breaking my heart and it should break your heart. You're being the fascists. You're the ones slaughtering their civilians. Look, how do you look at those children being starved to death in northern Gaza and not see Jewish children in Germany in the 1930s and 40s? How do you not see that? It's the same exact image. Snap out of it.
Oh, but Cenk,
stop being the thing that you hated.
All right, Cenk, before I go to Mosab for a response, how do you not see, conversely, that what happened on October the 7th was to Jewish people not dissimilar to what the Nazis did to them in World War II? How do you not see that parallel?
No, it is not similar at all.
It is.
At all, Piers.
It is. It's a group wedded to the destruction of all
it's
Jewish...
insanity.
Let me finish
Stop
my
saying
question.
The same things.
It is a group wedded, in the case of the Nazis, to the eradication of all Jewish people, as indeed are Hamas. What's the difference?
Okay, this is a convenient talking point to justify...
What's the difference?
Actually preventing the Palestinians from existing.
Tell me the moral difference.
What is wrong with you people?
Tell me the moral difference.
In reality, yes, of course I'll tell you the difference. So what they did on October 7th was terrible. I hate any civilians being killed. I hate terrorism. That is why Netanyahu is an awful, disgusting terrorist. He's killed 30 to 40 times the number of civilians that Sinwar did. What an awful, despicable terrorist he is. So now guys, October 7th can be terrible, but at the same time, you can acknowledge the power dynamic of who is stronger and who is not. Why does that make a difference? Because the Nazis were the more powerful force. They had every ability to wipe out the Jews, and they tried. The powerful force, Goliath, the Nazis, were horrible for what they did to the Jews. When the French resistance fought back and killed German civilians, it might have been the wrong strategy. It might have been immoral to kill German civilians. But the French resistance was not, oh, they're trying to wipe out Germans from existence, so the French resistance is bad. They should surrender to the Nazis. No, they were the powerless. The powerless always do ineffective violence that we call terrorism. And then to say, no, it's their fault that the powerless are going to somehow wipe out the powerful. No, you're framing it in a way that is totally hypothetical and theoretical because you want to avoid the reality of what is actually happening in the world, which is the Israelis wiping out the Palestinians, slaughtering them, tens of thousands
All right, let me
at a
bring in
time,
Mosab.
taking their land.
All right, Mosab, your response.
Wow, where do I begin? To analyze the mental state of this self-proclaimed savior of the Gaza children. He really touched my heart. Who authorized you to speak on behalf of the Arab children of Gaza? Who authorized you?
You just did. You
You
called me
never
a
been
Palestinian.
there. You don't care.
So am I
And
Palestinian or
now
am I
you
not?
think you hold the higher moral ground. You don't.
I do.
You're not the savior. You always need a victim in order to pose as the savior. You're not the savior. First, learn how to control yourself. Learn how to control your tongue buds before you try to control the world. It's a big situation in Gaza. All of us are heartbroken for the death of the children of Gaza. All of us. That includes Israel. Israel considers what's happening in Gaza a tragedy. It's a tragedy made up by the terrorists that you sympathize with, that you want to validate and legitimize. Then we will have to deal with the chaos that you create, your emotional being, going all over the place. Who authorized you to speak on the behalf of the Gaza? Nobody did.
You did.
You self-proclaimed, just like Mahmoud Abbas, just like Yasser Arafat, just like all the Palestinians who have been feeding on the pain of the Palestinian children. You are a parasite, a bottom feeder. This is what you are. So before you speak against the prime minister of a democracy and accuse him of being a terrorist, you need to look at yourself in the mirror. You have been supporting Hamas and it's recorded against you for eternity. So don't play the game now that your fight is for the children in Gaza. This is not your fight. You know who's fighting for the children of Gaza? The IDF that is killing Hamas, that is uprooting Hamas so the children of Gaza can have their freedom after 36 years of slavery. Those are the ones who qualify to speak on the topic, not you sitting in your comfort.
I mean,
And
Cenk,
you want to have an opinion about it.
All right,
This
let
is
me
the
ask Cenk.
problem that we have dealing with scumbags like this.
All right, let me try and bring things back to a more civilized context. Cenk, you must have been as appalled as everybody when you saw the images of Sinwar's tunnel network with him, with his wife, with her fancy handbag, which I know has been condemned as propaganda, but the image certainly looked genuine to me of that footage, with his kids perfectly safe, all underground in these very elaborate tunnels that he had spent all that money, the billions that Hamas were given when they took power, constructing, precisely so that people like him could be kept safe and his family, whilst after perpetrating the horror of October the 7th, he knew he was immediately condemning regular Palestinians in Gaza to death, women, children, and everybody else who would die as Israel responded to this appalling terror attack. When you look at that footage of Sinwar, perfectly safe, tucked away in his tunnel with his family, and then we see images of millions of dollars flopping around that he was storing and so on, do you not feel that I know you want to blame everything on Israel, but do you not feel that Sinwar himself was an appalling human being who did a terrible disservice to the people of Gaza?
You guys sound ridiculous. It's like I'm in the Twilight Zone.
What have I just said that's ridiculous?
You just said Sinwar was perfectly safe. They killed him.
Yeah, eventually they killed him.
Apparently he wasn't
a year
perfectly
later.
safe.
A year later.
Okay, so let's just be clear about who's being ridiculous. And then this guy, Mosab or whatever his name is, who, by the way, again, your audience should know is literally a paid agent of Israel. I mean, it's kind of obvious from what he says, but that he just said
do you know
that
he's a paid agent of Israel? Do you know he is?
Yeah. The IDF is saving the children of Gaza, and they should thank the IDF.
Do you know he's a paid agent of Israel, just for the record? You said he is. Do you know that?
He's the one. Wait, doesn't he admit it? He turned on his family, he turned them in, and now works for Israel. That's a well-known fact. So that's why he comes out here and says absurd things like Palestinians don't exist.
Why is he not allowed to? Why is he not allowed to renounce and disown Hamas?
No, he's allowed to do anything he likes, but he's an Israeli agent. That's a well-established fact. So, okay, anyways, so that's why he says the absurd things, and that's also why he calls me a parasite, dehumanize Muslims, and so that it's easier to kill them. So now to answer your question, look, as you know, Piers, I got no love for any of these fundamentalist Muslim leaders. You got the Ayatollah, it's oppression in Iran, I don't want it. Hamas and Hezbollah have become radicalized and are more Muslim fundamentalist. I don't agree with that ideology at all. I think that ideology is harmful. But I also know that when you do an occupation or you do an oppression, moderates don't arise. Extremists arise to fight that occupation and oppression. So these are just the realities of power dynamics. None of this has anything to do with ethnicity. If the roles were reversed and the Jews were the ones being oppressed by the Palestinians, I would say the same exact thing. And I would say, well, of course the Jews are, we can call them terrorists. And, the ones that fought the Nazis, you could call them terrorists. But they are resistance fighters as well, at a minimum. See, I can do it with either side being either ethnicity because I'm being fair. And so I don't like to see them living luxuriously, but if you're talking about living luxuriously, the Israelis have paid family leave, we don't. They have universal health care, we don't. They're the only country in the world that has Iron Dome, we don't. And we have given them hundreds of billions of dollars in America here. How come we don't get to live like the Israelis as we fund their genocide? And so, look, if it was Jewish children that a Palestinian state was murdering at this level, a shot to the head, starving them to death, I would hope that we would all be moved to help the Jews in that context. If we are not moved to do that, then we haven't learned anything. That never again doesn't mean anything. But if it's not Jewish people and it's Palestinians, we should have the same exact sympathy. But I don't see that anywhere in American media or in American politics. All I hear is about a theoretical state where Israel isn't the oppressor and could be oppressed, I don't know, 1,000,000 years from now, or when they lose their entire military for no reason at all. Like, you have to make up absurd hypotheticals to try to evoke sympathy for the occupiers. Will they end the occupation? That's the answer. Everybody knows that's the answer. But Israel won't, because they want to grab more land in the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
Let me ask
That's
Mosab.
obvious.
All right, Mosab, what is going to happen now? I mean, it seems to me that Netanyahu's gone from being incredibly unpopular 2 or 3 months ago to increasingly popular in Israel. His polling numbers are the highest they've been since October the 7th, when he was being blamed by Israeli people for what happened. They now are thoroughly enjoying and saluting and encouraging his attacks against Hezbollah and against Hamas, and the rhetoric against Iran and the Houthis and so on. If you look at it from Netanyahu's point of view, the more he attacks these groups, the more popular he gets. There's no disincentive to stop doing it. In fact, quite the opposite, especially as he's facing corruption charges at the end of all this. But do you think that this is going to be one of those moments in history when Israel, led by Netanyahu, now take the attack full square against Iran?
Okay, first of all, this is not Bibi's fight. This is not Benjamin Netanyahu's fight. This is the fight of the Jewish people. It's a fight of a nation that is in the face of an existential threat. And this is where I identify with the Jewish people, by the way. It's not the fact that I helped stop suicide bombers during the second Palestinian Intifada, and Cenk want me to feel guilty for saving human lives. And he tried to shame me for some reason. Thank God I know who I am, and I am very proud of what I did, because there is no way to go wrong with saving human lives. And today, when we look at the situation in Gaza, it's very similar. If I go to Gaza, the people of Gaza will kill me. If I go to the West Bank, the people of the West Bank would kill me. But why? You need to ask them that question. Because I stopped suicide bombing attacks against civilians that killed people indiscriminately. This is my crime. And Cenk agrees with them. And many of the pro-Palestine around the world agree with them. And what we say, this is not the fight of a politician in Gaza. This is the fight of a nation. I am fighting for my very existence, and this is where I identify with the Jewish fight. Now you ask me what's going to be next. And I don't like to do spoilers, but the entire Iranian regime is going to be history, sooner or later. And of course, your guests keep on trying to discredit me. They don't know that I'm coming from that hill, from the depth of it, to a degree that I can foresee the future. You can just go back to our first interview from the beginning of the war and what I told you, and what I have been telling you, and what I tell you now. The Iranian regime, that includes Ayatollah and the Iranian Guard, they are all targets. The next level is going to be massive assassinations in Tehran. Everybody who helped the attacks on October 7th, everybody who orchestrated the attacks against the Jewish people, everybody who helped sacrifice Arab and Jewish children, Persian children, Ayatollah, since 1979, until now, he enjoyed a free ride. But now, this is not going to continue for eternity. He's wanted, and he's going to be punished. The Iranian nuclear program is going to be destroyed. And anyone who gets in the way, it doesn't matter where they are, even if they are politicians in the West, they are going to fall. Because we cannot afford letting any Islamic entity, and I said this previously, and I mean what I say, and you need to take this very seriously. A person who has been launching ballistic missiles on a democracy while millions of children had to go to shelter again and again and again. Then he funded his proxies to destabilize an entire region. This type of lunatics cannot obtain mass destruction weapon. It's as simple as that. It's common sense. You don't need to be part of the Israeli intelligence to realize that Ayatollah with a mass destruction weapon is bad news. So Cenk and many of those losers want us to stop and wait for help to come from the outside, just like the Palestinians, by the means of manipulation and deception. And when things don't go their way, they get very angry. And we tell them, you will be defeated. Cenk, you are going to be defeated. You are already defeated.
Okay. Cenk, final word to you.
Piers, did you hear what he just said? He threatened politicians in the West that if they don't agree with Israel's war against Iran, that they're going to fall. And remember, he's an Israeli agent. Are you saying Israel will murder politicians in the West or get rid of them politically through bribery or whatever else? What do you mean the politicians in the West will fall if they don't agree to back Israel's war against Iran?
Yeah, we will not vote for them anymore.
Oh, no, well, you don't vote for them now. You're not in our country. What do you mean the politicians will fall?
We live in democracy, and we have the right to bring them up and to bring them down. Those who agree with Ayatollah, we don't want them in office. And all the sympathizers with terrorists like yourself, we don't want them even to be in our country.
Who is we, and how are you bringing down politicians in the West if they dare to defy Israel? Tell me how you're bringing them down.
I already answered you that.
Are you going to murder them, or are you going to bribe them? Are you going to bribe someone else? Who are you going to do? And okay, so let me answer it because he's not. Look, the best case scenario, we've seen the worst case scenario. Buy an Israeli product, see how it turns out for you, okay? Now, the best case scenario for what he's saying there is, oh, no, AIPAC's going to come in and say, hey, if you work for Israel, we'll give you a lot of money, and now J Street too. If you don't work for Israel, we'll give that money to your political opponent and we'll eliminate you politically. And that is where we are here in America. And Piers, you can't deny it. I mean, right now, almost all of our politicians, their top donor is AIPAC. And so, in a sense, the United States is occupied territory. And now Mosab or Mossad or whoever he is saying, hey, well, you better watch out. If you defy Israel at all and you don't pay for the war we're starting with Iran, there could be consequences for you if you're a politician in the West. And that is super scary. And this is the bullies that they are. They have tremendous power while pretending to be powerless. And I want to be super clear here, guys. I'm talking about the government of Israel. We're not, and the right wing, and they literally have terrorists in their cabinet, convicted in Israel of supporting terrorism. This out of control right-wing extremist government is now saying that if you defy us in any way, there's going to be consequences for you throughout the world, including the lethal consequences they've shown in the Middle East. They've now attacked 5 of their neighbors, and he just promised that they're going to do a series of assassinations all across Iran. That's called starting a war. And guess who's going to pay for it? They're going to make us, the American taxpayer, pay for the war of Israel. And if any of our politicians defy them, you just heard an Israeli agent saying that they will fall.
Well, I think he made it clear he meant politically fall, in the sense that
meant what?
People would vote.
He meant what?
That people would vote against
really?
him if they took
That's
that
not
position.
what the polling shows.
Okay.
That's not what the polling shows at all. So it has nothing to do with voting. That was a threat.
I've got to leave it there. But
and he's threatening me too. Let's be clear about that.
No, he's not threatening
Anyone
you.
who is against Israel, thugs like this, fascist thugs like this, threaten their very lives. They threaten their careers. They threaten to arrest them. They threaten to fire them. It is cancel culture on a global scale.
Okay. I've got to leave it there. A fascinating debate. Thank you both very much. I appreciate it.